Clara Schumann was one of the most iconic musicians of the 19th century. She was a performer, a teacher, a mother, and a composer. She was one of the greatest piano virtuosos the world has ever seen. And in terms of her composing, she was on track to become one of the world's greatest composers. Then, in her mid-30s, something almost tragic happens. At a moment in time when most composers find their abilities in full bloom, Clara Schumann essentially stops composing. Now, why did this happen? Was it personality factors? Was it society? Or was it something else? Stick with me. That's what we're going to talk about today. Now, Clara Schumann was born Clara Wieck in 1819 to a very musical family. And in fact, her father was a famous piano pedagogue. So, of course, she learned piano to a very high level at a very early level. In fact, she may be one of the greatest child prodigies the world has ever seen. And in addition to that, she started composing very early, all this encouraged by her father. At the age of 12, young Clara Wieck traveled to Paris to play for Frédéric Chopin, who was incredibly impressed by her playing. She played his works to him, and he was so moved by it that they actually had planned to do a concert together, though it never came to fruition. But she would go on to incorporate many of Chopin's works into her repertoire throughout her life. Now, how many of you out there have composed your own piano concerto? And of those who say yes, how many did that at age 14? Well, Clara Schumann did that, and it was orchestrated by her future husband, Robert Schumann, and it was premiered at the Leipzig Gewandhaus with Mendelssohn conducting. Clara Schumann's early music included many works for her instrument, the piano, plus other chamber music works, art songs, and the piano trio in G minor, which I've had the honor of playing. And I can tell you from my own experience that especially that piano trio is a very mature, very rich work. It showed a lot of promise. Her early works, of course, come from her classical training, the music of her peers, early romantic music, and also from her deeply rich imagination. Works like that piano trio or the Romance for violin and piano show a very painterly lyricism. Now, one strange criticism I've heard of her music is that her output is less than her male contemporaries. But when you realize that she stopped in her mid-30s, essentially, and lived into her 70s, it seems like an unfair criticism, doesn't it? And in fact, I would say that the music that you hear that she composed, especially in her late 20s and early 30s, shows a maturity beyond her years. Now, it's probably important that I point out here that Robert Schumann was also a pupil of Frédéric Wieck. You see, he originally wanted to become a virtuoso pianist, but he hurt his hands with a contraption of his own making. Thankfully for us, because of his compositional genius, that allowed him to become the great composer we know today. But he fell in love with Clara Wieck quite at a young age for her. But when they wanted to get married, the father sued to prevent it. Now, for those people who think they sometimes have difficult with their in-laws, imagine starting off your married life with your father-in-law having sued you and then having lost. The early years of their marriage were full of wonder and joy, with both of them composing and both of them performing. And Clara was encouraged to perform not only by Robert, but also by her father. But when you look into her diaries, we already see a little bit of societal norms pressing down on her goals. She says in her diaries, "A woman must not desire to compose. There has never yet been one able to do it." This really gets to me because already we see how her mindset and societal norms are impinging on her compositional life. And besides that, it simply wasn't true. There were female composers all the way back to Hildegard von Bingen. This diary entry didn't mark the ending of her composing, but it did signal what was to come. But this is where tragedy starts to creep in. You see, Robert Schumann probably suffered from what we now call bipolar disorder, and it got so bad that he attempted suicide by throwing himself off a bridge into the Rhine River. He wasn't successful, he was rescued, and he lived beyond that time, but it did nothing to help his mental state. Shortly after that, Robert Schumann was put in an insane asylum, and he died shortly after in 1856. And at that point, Clara Schumann became the financial anchor of her family. After all, the Schumanns had 8 children. Well, Clara, luckily, was a very famous and excellent concert pianist, So she toured Europe relentlessly. She had to earn money to support her family. In these days, there was no social security, there were no social programs that you'd have now. Well, that relentless touring was one of the reasons she stopped composing. She just didn't have the mental headspace for the creativity that you needed for composing. And on top of that, she was teaching and editing her husband's scores, which took up even more time. Now, here's the crazy thing. After 1856, Clara basically stopped composing, and she lived another 40 years. What she did compose was mostly transcriptions of works by her husband and also Johannes Brahms, and a few pedagogical pieces and a couple of cadenzas. Only one original piece appeared during this time, a march for a friend's anniversary. She never returned to composing the way she had before. And there's another aspect of this that's probably best saved for a different video, and that's her relationship with Johannes Brahms, which was very complex. We know they had a deep affection for each other, which lasted throughout their lifetimes, and it was even thought that Brahms at one point might propose to her after Schumann's death, but it never happened. Well, this sort of emotional complexity was yet another layer in her life that made it difficult for her to find the mental space to compose her own music. The emotional toll of Robert Schumann's death and her need to support her family by herself cannot be underestimated. If you have ever tried to compose anything, you know it takes a great amount of personal concentration and effort. It's a solitary thing. You need your time and your space to do it. Now, of course, it's not fair to take today's societal norms and impose them on that time period, but it is true to say that society did not expect professional women composers. They did exist, but that pressure was felt very keenly by Clara Schumann. And yes, as I say, there were women composers, but they faced a struggle. If we think of someone like Fanny Mendelssohn, the sister of Felix Mendelssohn, she did publish under her own name, but a lot of her music actually was published under her brother Felix's name. And I'm not saying that she quit composing because of some gender norm at the time. I am saying that that societal pressure was one of the reasons. To me, the ultimate irony and tragedy of it all is that Clara's fame as a pianist helped to pay the bills, helped her to support the music of her husband and other composers like Brahms, but it crowded out that time that she would have to compose her own music. Her performances put bread on the table, paid bills, and maintained legacies, but tragically, it also stopped her composition at a time when she was just beginning to bloom. She had 40 more years of life where she could have become who knows what. We'll never know. Now, Clara's music fell into obscurity while her husband's music and Brahms' music lives on today. But thankfully, in the late 20th century, there was a revival of her music, a rediscovering of it. At least we have that. If there is a tragedy, it's that we can no longer hear her perform. We will never know what she would have become as a composer. Hers was a brilliance constrained by duty, love, and society. I encourage you to give her music a chance. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe. And I'm really interested to hear your comments on this one. Have you ever played any of her music? Have you listened to it? What do you think of it? Let me know. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.